Being here this morning.
You are live.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda. Could I have roll call, please?
Right, give me the ones. You can shut the screen or it'll start.
While you're doing that, I am going to ask that today we only have committee members at the table meaning our normal board seating. And we do have Gina Martin here, staff from planning department, joining us at the table.
Ms. Bramer,
Here.
Mr. Dickinson, Ms. Seaver,
Here.
Mr. Agnew,
Here.
Ms. Gillis,
Here.
Mr. Thomas,
Here.
Mr. Beatty,
Here.
Mr. Lamont,
Here.
Mr. Wild,
Here.
Mr. Gaddy,
Here.
Mr. Leggett. You do have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Thank you very much, Amanda. Let's have an approval of our minutes. Could I have a motion to that effect, please? They did go out by email. Supervisor Beatty.
Yes.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Ray. Mr. Agnew on second. Any discussion, comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Or abstentions? That carries. Thank you. I do want to welcome back Ethan Gaddy. Thank you for helping me get us ready a little bit for today after you've been out with your new baby. So congratulations on that and welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gina, thank you also for getting a lot of this put together and printed out. We appreciate that very much. At the last full board meeting, they did pass our resolution to eliminate the 2 vacant seats. Well, the 1 vacant seat left by the departure of Mike Biddle from ARCC and the vacant seat left by Mike Swan resigning from the committee. So we're down. No, we didn't do that.
That's for the October 21st meeting. So technically you still have a committee of 13 and need 7
Bummer.
for a quorum. So that'll go through on the 21st.
All right, Amanda, thank you for that clarification. Hopefully that'll go through and help us later. I really thought that did pass. Okay. First thing on the agenda is privilege of the floor. If anyone would like to speak to us today during privilege of the floor and public comment, we would ask that you go to the podium and speak into the mic so everyone can hear you, please.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Meter, and I am on the board of the Adirondack Theater Festival that produces the Adoramic Film Festival. The Adirondack Theater Festival has applied for $25,000 in American Rescue Plan funds to support the Adirondack Film Festival. Now in its 7th year, the Adirondack Film Festival in Glens Falls is the only film festival in the country operated by a prominent professional theater company, the Adirondack Theater Festival. The festival's special focus on stage to screen artists and Adirondack region artists makes it a unique event that's receiving increasing national recognition. This year, the festival is screening the work of major artists, including an Academy Award winner, a Tony Award winner, an Emmy Award winner, and a Golden Globe nominee. AFF has consistently earned top ratings from filmmakers in the international platform Film Freeway. Its intimate scale and down-to-earth vibe allow local audience and artists to mingle with top national talent. This enriches our region's quality of life while driving significant revenue to local businesses after the summer season has waned. As far as economic development, Adirondack Film Festival contributes significantly to the economic vitality of Glens Falls in multiple ways. The festival invests roughly $20,000 annually in local vendors and seasonal employees to produce the event. In turn, roughly 2,000 patrons attend the festival screenings, driving traffic to local restaurants, breweries, shops, hotels in mid-October. Since the festival's founding 6 years ago, the Adirondack Film Commission was established to support the steady increase in production of films, television shows, commercials, and digital media in the Glens Falls region. A big payoff for the film festival extends far beyond the 1 weekend of the event. Our festival offers a means to attract and cultivate 50 to 100 filmmakers annually and provide a sense of legitimacy for shooting their films in our community. With the support of this grant, the Adirondack Film Festival will continue to grow exponentially. Glens Falls can become a haven for filmmaking and for our community to see hundreds of thousands of dollars in increased spending on goods and services in our region. The festival exposes audiences to a range of high-quality films unavailable in the mainstream movie theaters, educational documentaries, international films, visionary, children's entertainment, experimental shorts, music videos by emerging songwriters, and more. Some specific categories that make AFF unique include homegrown films by the Adirondack regional filmmakers, film by Native and Indigenous filmmakers, and stage-to-screen films written by writers and directors whose work spans the gap between theater and film. The Adirondack Film Festival is a beloved event, unlike any other entertainment option in the Glens Falls area. According to a 2022 study by the National Endowment of the Arts and the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, few sectors of the economy were hit harder by the COVID-19 pandemic than arts and culture sector. By the end of 2020, the U.S. arts economy had shed more than 500,000 jobs. 40% of this decline occurred in the motion picture and performing arts industries. Although the Adirondack Theater Festival and the Adirondack Film Festival have endured, our operations have been significantly impacted by the pandemic. The film festival has provided the opportunity to adapt to the new normal of the pandemic. Last year, AFF adapted to a hybrid model in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We joined a handful of innovative film festivals around the country to help beta test a new online platform to support both in-person and virtual screenings. This provided our audiences with the option of attending the festival in the theater, at home, or both, allowing AFF to continue to operate in uncertain times. We believe this type of flexibility and innovation will be crucial to rebuilding our audience base in 2022 and beyond. AFF is a program which encompasses both a nonprofit organization and a key element of the Glens Falls tourism industry. Adirondack Theater Festival is the biggest event of the summer in Glens Falls and is responsible for nearly $500,000 in economic impact annually. By helping to replace this lost revenue, the ARPA funding will help us produce this year's festival on a full scale, attracting patrons to in-person and virtual screenings, and putting us on a path to rebuilding our audience to pre-pandemic levels. ARPA funding will successfully strengthen AFF's contribution to Warren County's tourism and nonprofit community service by helping to fill the gap in our revenue created by the pandemic. This grant will help provide funds we urgently need to invest in this fall's film festival. It will allow us to engage in local vendors, prepare and promote the festival, which in turn drive traffic to other businesses downtown and in the area. Our success will be measured by the revenue generated by this year's film festival and future festivals, by economic impact of the film festival on Glens Falls region. In turn, a successful film festival this year will strengthen our organization's ability to fundraise and make the investments necessary to rebuild our base of support in 2023. Miriam, would you like to?
Thank you so much, Andrea.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miriam, and I am the producing artistic director of the Adirondack Theater Festival and the Adirondack Film Festival. I'm sorry if I'm a little groggy this morning. We opened the festival last night, and our 3-person staff has been working around the clock to make this in-person and virtual event possible. As Andrew so eloquently reminded us, and as I know this group is aware, the COVID-19 pandemic had a devastating impact on the U.S. arts sector. We shed 500,000 jobs, and 40% of those were in motion pictures and performing arts. We are coming back, but we are coming back at a significantly slower pace than other sectors. Skilled labor in the history of our field has never been harder to find or more expensive to retain. Many of our older patrons are still hesitant to come out to large in-person gatherings, and many more are feeling the pinch of inflation and hesitant to spend leisure dollars. But when the Adirondack Film Festival thrives, Glens Falls thrives. Andrew really eloquently explained the economic impact of this festival. We can measure that economic impact. What we can't measure is the impact of the inspiration that these films and conversations bring to our region. Last night, journalists and DJs from local radio stations came out to meet the director for the band Blondie. We screened a documentary about Blondie's visit to Cuba as part of a cultural exchange, and we had a conversation with that artist about the universality of music and art and its power to transcend cultural and political barriers and instill a spirit of freedom around the world. That inspiration will now radiate out to the readers of those journalists and the listeners to those radio stations. That is the kind of experience that only happens at the Adirondack Film Festival. I'll give you one more example. Today, we are flying in the West Coast-based creators of a documentary feature about the discovery of Lyme disease and the controversies that have grown up around its treatment. We have been inundated by requests from local families who are struggling to grapple with Lyme disease and cannot afford passes to the festival. They want to be included in this experience. They want to be there for the discussion with the directors and our local microbiologist, Dr. Holly Ahern from SUNY Adirondack, who's the vice president of the Lyme Action Network. We are bringing these thought leaders together. We want to make this event accessible to everybody in our region who wants to participate. We need this group's support to close the gap between the costs of creating this festival and bringing it to the market that's demanding it. The U.S. art sector is in the fight of our lives right now, and we are winning this fight as long as we continue to have the county behind us. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Miriam, thank you. Stay there just in case there's any question. And Andrew, thank you. I was going to ask when exactly it was opening, but you already answered that. You started last night, so that's very exciting. Thank you for your work in the cultural aspect in our community. It's really important. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you. Thank you for the passion that you clearly have for your profession and for the community and for the county. It's refreshing to hear and inspiring. I do have a question, however, and I don't know if maybe Andrew can answer it. Historically, occupancy tax has been something that is awarded to help bring in tourism, to help those heads and beds, to continue to have that crowd. You know better than anyone about this. You know better than anyone about this, this tax. And, you know, ARPA is a one-time funding. We aren't ever going to get this again. So we're trying to do everything we can to maximize that input to our community and to those in need. Is it something that in the future, I didn't see, looking really quickly at occupancy tax awards in the past, significant awards going towards this festival, especially given the type of impact. When I looked online at your website, I really was impressed with that virtual option, that in-person and the hybrid. And I think all of that draws attention to our region, whether you're here physically or you're watching it online. And I applaud you for taking those lessons learned from COVID and really monopolizing on the opportunity to highlight our county. So I don't think you should stop at the ARPA one-time funding, and I hope it's supported for you. What I want to encourage you to do is to contact our tourism department and apply for, if you've applied in the past, apply for more, you know, continue to look at occupancy taxes of revenue that could help you expand and help your organization and your events.
Yeah, absolutely. We do apply for occupancy tax on an annual basis. I believe in the past, we were in the town part of that and not the county part. I believe we should jump to that level. I think it's worth it. I think this specific funding is really critical for us this year because of the impact of the pandemic. We don't anticipate nor are budgeting this for years in the future. This is a one-time shot as it was, in my opinion, designed to be, to help us, you know, fill that gap created by budget losses in previous years.
Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, thanks. As Supervisor Sieber mentioned, OCTAX is more than viable. Just to give you an idea, we have 2 million more in OCTAX this year than last year. So if they try to be stingy with you, don't put up with it. Don't put up with it, because you're a tourist driver. You're a huge asset to the community, not just Glens Falls, but all Warren County. And don't be shy. We have over $6 million in OCTAX money received.
We'll take $1 million.
I'll put that in there, pass that along, but I'm just making sure that you understand the amount in that OCTAC
Yes.
fund now. So let's keep up the good work. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you. We're still on public comment. If anybody else wants to say anything, going once, okay.
Good morning. My name is Doug Miller, Adirondack Sports Complex. I would just like to, on the record, correct some misstatements that were made at the last week's meeting. There was a statement made that I had refused to provide financial documents for review for the ARPA committee. There was also a statement made that I may have falsified information potentially. And there was a statement made that someone had insights to our financial stability beyond what this committee has. Each of those statements, and there was also a statement made that we hadn't applied for the ARPA funds properly. Each of those statements were false and continue to be false. If I can go back just a little chronology on time. March 27th, I filled out the solicitation form online, which was at that time the only information gathering piece that the committee had. At the March 29th ARPA meeting, I spoke at length about, and there was discussion about our situation and our request. Going back through the video, that dialogue occurred between 1 hour and 30 minutes and 50 seconds and 1 hour and 51 minutes and 30 seconds on the YouTube video. And between 1 hour and 46 minutes and 1 hour and 49 minutes, there was discussion about providing financial. I said, one of the things I don't want to be doing is having my financials brought up on YouTube. And I would be more than happy to share my financials with members of a subset of the committee. And at that same meeting, Mike Wald, County Treasurer, offered to have somebody from his office who is bonded, non-disclosure certified, to review those sorts of documents. And the committee at that point didn't make a decision on moving in that direction or not. But in no time did I say we would not provide financials. Also, at the May 10th meeting, there was again a fair amount of discussion at the 1 hour and 21 minute to 1 hour and 38 minute mark on the video, the YouTube video. And the committee at that point approved $200,000 for the Adirondack Sports Complex. May 21st at the full board meeting, that resolution was discussed in some detail between the 59 minute mark and the 1 hour and 21 minute mark. And the vote was taken at 1 hour and 41 minutes. So you can go back to those times and reference and review any of that. So we'd applied, been approved, full board approved. Then and this was as of May 20th. On the May 31st meeting, for committee meeting, the committee discussed having some different form of application for businesses. And they felt that it would take another couple of weeks. The ARPA committee's business application form never came to fruition until June, and it went online June 20th. So prior to that, and since then, we have provided everything we've been asked to provide. So I'd just like to make sure the record is correct and is the misstatements that were made at the last meeting are addressed in that fashion. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, I will allow questions, Mr. Miller, if you don't mind. And I do want to correct you. You misstated the name of the treasurer. It's Mike Swan. And I will say that I have been following up with Mike Swan and the county attorney and getting whatever, background documentation that we need for the file. The money has already been awarded by the full board. Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, I followed up with Mike Swan, and he said you've been more than above board on giving them any and all information they need. So that falsehood that was spread at the last meeting was a travesty. I apologize on behalf of this committee for the slanderous remarks made by a committee member. They weren't accurate. They make this committee look less than professional. Most of us have read all the applications and scored them. Scored them.
Madam Chairman,
So,
come on,
once, I have the floor.
He has the floor. I'm not cutting people off.
okay.
I have the floor. So on behalf of the committee, I apologize for those outlandish remarks last committee meeting. And you've done everything that this committee was asked. And Mike Swan has verified that. So thank you.
I will also add that I have had a couple conversations with Ethan and one with Mike, and the decision now is for me to, after the fact, put the new application together, and I'm in the process of doing that. Should have that to Ethan later today or by Monday.
Thank you.
Just a minute. Supervisor Wild.
In response on a number of points that I'm going to take major offense with. People say that I haven't read and I haven't scored. I have read every single one of these applications while I was on vacation. Thank you, Mr. Beatty. I appreciate that. Secondly, I did score them in my head, and I either decided I was unqualified to determine whether they were worthy or they were unworthy of that. So, I'm tired of this. I really am. We're supposed to be here doing some work. We can disagree. It's democracy. You have discussions. You have disagreements. You move forward. I myself have had about enough of the politics that happens in this committee and on the board. And I would appreciate you as the chairwoman to have the willpower to help enforce that moving forward.
Point of
Now,
order.
moving forward with,
Point of order.
I still have the floor.
There's a point of order. What is your point?
Madam Chairwoman, consistent with Robert's rules and the process of which we call point of orders in this board, our opinions and names are not to be permitted while under not only our rules of the board, but Robert's order in order to maintain decorum in this meeting. I would ask that you please ask supervisors that are speaking to remind them that opinions, names, and any type of derogatory remarks are therefore permitted in our boardroom.
Your point is well taken. Please do not refer to people's names or their opinions or the reasons that they may or may not be making their debate points. You may continue just as I allowed you to continue at the last meeting
Thank you.
where
In
you
terms of
speak
Mr.
at length. Supervisor Wild,
My-
you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Response to some implied comments about derogatory comments about the applicant. I had discussions with him prior to committee meetings, prior to the whole board. I asked the board to go into executive session to talk about some of the financial aspects that this applicant told me. That was denied by the full board. So I have a problem with the process that we vet and understand the business fundamentals of some of the people that we're giving money to. And it appears as though I'm the only one that is that way. But I will continue to move forward with that because it's important that we vet these businesses as closely as we can. And I'm not sure who on this committee has the experience to be able to truly do that without getting some outside help, because I'm not sure how many have been in small business, or been in the financial world to be able to make that decision happen also. So Madam Chair, thank you. I'm done for now.
Of course, I want everyone to be heard. Supervisor Wild, when we created the application, I'm responding to you. We had the ability to create whatever we wanted as the criteria. If you still have concerns, I suggest that you meet with the treasurer about those concerns. And I would like to go forward. And I would like to keep politics out of this. We have been doing the best we possibly can. Looking at these as objectively as we possibly can. It's not a perfect process. I admit that freely. But I think we've been doing a good job, and I'd like to continue on. Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. In response to Mr. Miller, and again, thank you for being so patient as we have developed applications. And as you know, it is a process, and it should be a fairly lengthy, detailed, and well-debated process. Over the last year and a half, we've come to the point taking in our community's responses and all of our scoring mechanisms to a system where when everyone scores the applications, it should provide us with a fairly adequate and average for us to go through and make those subsequent awards. You are correct that for months we did not have an official application as we continue to work through it, but it was this committee and the full board's desire to help communities and businesses as fast and as effectively as we could. And your application, you certainly responded early on when we did not hear from many businesses. And we use that as an example to go in our community and say, we're here to help small businesses. We know that's something the community asked us for. You did submit that application that we had at the time. And I want to reassure you that at the last meeting, this entire committee, at least voted by or consensus, again, by majority, and asked our county attorney to ensure that any applications that were given prior to the official adoption of our formal applications were asked to resubmit, not for reconsideration, but rather for documentation. So you are not being singled out. We've asked that of Glens Transit. We've asked it of our daycare. And I think the only exception to that has been county funded, where the dollars went directly into the county coffers for various projects. They were not required to fill out that same application. And I believe that was, again, the consensus of the committee. We don't always agree, but at the end of the day, we do try to move forward, have that debate, and respectfully go with the majority. So, and vote our whatever way we feel appropriate at the full board. So I don't want you to feel singled out. I'm sure our county attorney is working on that as well. And
If you can respond, Mr. Miller, we're still in public comment, privilege of the floor technically. I will say, I do need to do some more follow-up on those others that we requested additional documentation from too. So hopefully, Mr. Elman can help with that aspect.
I one other, just one other thing that Mr. Wild brought up was and I did mention early on, insight into financials of the business. Perhaps he missed that comment at the March, not 29th meeting when I discussed our financials, and I said, I have no idea, and it's on the record. I have no idea where our lenders will be at the end of the day through all of this. Mr. Weil at the full board meeting asked me to come out in the hall a couple of times and ask me some questions, and I reiterated that to him. And at that point, that seemed to be new information that that's what he wanted to share, is supposedly confidential information he has that nobody else has. But I'd already mentioned and discussed that at the March meeting. So there wasn't anything new, and there isn't anything new today.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I know what we heard from small businesses recently is that a lot of them are struggling. They're really struggling, and they're hoping that we will move this money and get it out to the community. Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, just to comment, there's no guarantees of anything in life. 40% of all the businesses in COVID went out of business, and still many of them are still going to go out of business, even with additional help. So to say, to predict the future, not one of us in this room can. No way has the expertise, and we can't even find those experts because every experts vary on every different issue. So we make the best decision we can. We put in the long hours of scoring applications, long hours to try to do the right thing. There's never been any politics in it. It's just to do the right thing. Do the right thing. Put in the clean, put in the work, and be fair. And that's what we've done. And so I can't predict where any business that we give money to will be tomorrow, 6 months from now, or a year from now. But I can tell you how many have gone out of business through the COVID, and how many more may go out of business because of the COVID. So that's what I know. And if anybody's got a crystal ball can predict something, I'm all for it. Let's take a look at it. Thanks.
Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, we move on.
Hey, is there anyone else from the public? Okay, let's move on. All right, so we don't have any specific action items other than to get through some discussion, and hopefully there will be some resolutions coming out of today. Anything from the committee members before I charge forward? Okay. The update on the Community Services Board is that there really isn't an update, right, Wayne?
Correct.
Nothing more. They have put forward some funding requests through finance.
Correct. They put 4 resolution requests through. They funded 3 of the applications through opioid money, and they're still considering the other fund.
Okay. Did that pass finance? In the finance committee, did those pass?
Those are going to the board on Friday.
20%.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that is a positive update there. The next item is applications for funding small business. Before we get to that, I know I've been getting questions from committee members, phone calls, texts, talking to Ethan and Gina about where are we going? Let's just take a step back. Okay, so we have 3.6 million roughly. 3.6 million of funding left. And in my mind, I've kind of put them into 3 different categories that we have left. The small businesses, obviously, we haven't gotten through those yet. There's still other not-for-profits that we haven't reached. And then I'm lumping the rest is kind of in this remaining category of water, sewer, broadband, some government municipal requests, which also includes the EMS requests, and there's a fire department in there. At the last full board meeting, we had a request to take that back, the EMSs, and look at it again and try to give funding to more of the EMSs throughout the entire county. That's a little bit difficult because some have met the application deadline, submitted their applications, and the rest of them did not submit an application. So, and now I've already had 2 requests come in as applications from other EMSs throughout the county. So I'm not sure how the committee wants to tackle that exactly. I would like to have a discussion at some point. But I do want to kind of say, let's take a step back. How much do we have left and how much are we going to allocate to each of the different categories? So last meeting, or maybe it was 2 meetings ago, I had said, listen, we have to be really realistic on the small businesses. It looks like we only have about $500,000 to $750,000 left. So that's 750,000 is what I'm ballparking for that category. Sorry, for small businesses, yeah. Let me just pull up this other spreadsheet. The other pretty big category is the remaining not-for-profits. And if you look at that, I mean, here, I should have brought my actual calculator. That leaves us, so if you take about a 700,000 out, little less than 3 million. Take another million for the not-for-profits, the remaining not-for-profits. And another million for the third category of a whole bunch of different stuff. We're not going to be able to fund everybody at all of their requests. What I would like to consider, I've had this request too, is are there any applications in here that we think should be referred to other committees? I know we heard about OCTAX today, and that's certainly available for some things. But we heard specifically with the ATF request, their request is for COVID relief funding, the gap that they had from that year of the pandemic. Does anybody have any other suggestions? Do you want to go through the committee, the applications to refer things to committees? Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I have 2 requests. One, perhaps for our next meeting, if we could see a chart of all the comments as it related to, there was a checkbox in our scoring application that said, is there other funding that you can think of that might be available to close the gap or instead of? And I haven't seen those comments printed out from all the members because I think collectively we all have a wide variety of resources and knowledge from working in the community, whether it be as a business owner or a not-for-profit director or through our county government. And I know that on almost every single one, I also added alternative funding options. So that might be helpful in making that decision and reaching out to those entities, let them know that there might be these alternative funding sources available. notwithstanding that, there were two that caught my eye that I would like to ask the committee to entertain to send to the Warren County committee structure. One was, and I'm just looking them up quickly for the amount, the Warren County Public Defender's Office. The Warren County Public Defender's Office is a direct office under our county government. It is something that we're obligated to do under county, which is provide services to those charged with crimes that are indigent or meet those thresholds for representation. We have a robust public defender's office. That being said, they're asking for staffing needs. And I think if we got into the practice of having every county department apply for ARPA fundings for staffing needs, we would never have enough ARPA money. Well, and it is something that I believe is a requirement and a duty under county government to provide these services. It should be debated by the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. I know as a member of that committee, we often hear about staffing requests, and we have been cautioned time and time again with ARPA dollars to be creating positions. This is not funding that's going to be able to be sustainable long term. And it certainly sounds like if this was something that was considered and funded, at the end of the day, Warren County is picking up that position. So I would ask that go to the Public Safety and Criminal Justice Committee for consideration and discussion. There's also OILS grant and some other types of grant funding that are readily available through the Public Defender's Office. And in this case, I do believe there's some other innovative grants that we could pursue. So of course, our planning department knows how incredible they are at obtaining grants, but second to none is the Public Defender's Office. So that was one that it would free up. I mean, that was $267,000. The other one that I would like this committee to also consider is that there are two requests in front of us. One, I believe, already got funded through county dollars, which was the app program for the Warren County Emergency Services for $6,300. And the other was, frankly, I'm not sure why this one is here, for PPE for $3,146 from OES. It is our responsibility as a county to provide masks, gloves, and all those other things that every county government did during the pandemic. We had access to be able to ask for reimbursement through our treasurer's office. He tracked every single COVID expense. And, I really think that either this comes out of our contingency, OES budget, or we do what we've done with all these other expenses and we submit them to the federal government for reimbursement. So, those three right there seem to be appropriate. All of them would go back actually to the Public Safety and Criminal Justice Committee for consideration. So I would like to make that motion if there was a second to it.
Yeah,
I would be proposing that the applications for Warren County Office of Emergency Services, there were two. One for a smartphone app, which Amanda, was that funded, Amanda, already through? It went to committee.
I do not recall.
Yeah, we had Craig, are you on that committee?
Smartphone app. Funding one.
I think it did too. I'm sorry, Supervisor Leggett. I apologize. I do believe that it went through.
thank you. Please direct your questions to the chair.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, the supervisor from Queensberry, for that reminder. Chairwoman, I believe that the Warren County Emergency Services was funded through committee. I cannot be positive, but at any rate, I would make the motion that the OES for the smartphone app, the OES for masks, gloves, hand sanitizer for $3,100, and the Warren County Public Defender's Office for staffing needs all be referred as a priority over to the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee for consideration through general funds.
I have a second from Mr. Lamothe. Is there discussion? Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you. Now, for these state and local fiscal recovery funds, those were appropriate requests for sure. And I understand that the county also has obligation to pick those up. But this is not to be seen that these were funds appropriately requested by those entities.
Supervisor Seaver, unless there's anybody else, go ahead.
Nor did I mean to apply that. We permitted every single application that the community wanted to apply for. We have individuals from the county, employees, anyone who wanted to apply, they, by the deadline date, were all allowed to apply. So I think it's good that this is coming to our attention. I wish it came through the committee structure so we could address it like the app did. And then concurrently also remove it from here. So we were looking at relevant information, but I applaud the tenacity of anyone who decided to apply. It was here. We asked people their opinion, asked how they could help, and we had some very creative requests. So again, I applaud that persistence and think it should, however, go to the direct and appropriate committee.
Seeing no further discussion, I'm going to call the question. Try voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. And we will send it over with urgency and priority. Thank you. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the comments, I believe all of them are printed on the individual sheets that we received for each of the projects. It was in a manila folder. It looks like a stack like this. You can go through and look at those.
Thank you.
Yes,
I believe Sarah mentioned that it was a selection of comments, not all.
oh, okay,
Believe.
okay.
My other request,
We will ask planning to help us pull out if there are any other comments about funding suggestions for funding sources. Supervisor Sieber.
and could we provide them to the applicants for the alternative funding so that they
Yes,
have that information?
we can do that. One that I would like to point out specifically, if I may, is the one about daycare. That applicant was asking for $5,000 for support for their daycare, and I think that we should refer them to the Adirondack Southern Child Care Network, because that's exactly what that funding was supposed to do, is to help existing childcare, help them get off the ground, help them with infrastructure needs, help them with meeting the state requirements. So I don't know that we need a motion for that, but if someone could help us follow up with that applicant and get them referred over there, make the connection with Lynn Sickles. Wayne, can you help us make that happen, please? Thank you.
Yes.
Beth, Ms. Gills,
There was another childcare, the J Labs.
J
We had
Labs.
two.
Oh,
There was J Labs and there was.
I forgot about that one. Okay.
I can't remember, but the one you just mentioned. Small tails.
Small Tales is the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
What was the other one?
J Labs Child Center,
Yes, for
30,000.
Right.
I'm not certain they're existing yet, though, so. It didn't seem like they were. It was maybe a startup. I don't remember entirely the nuances of the money that was given to the Southern Adirondack Child Care Network, but
Let's refer them over there anyway, because not only did the Child Care Network get ARPA dollars from the county, they were able to get federal dollars too. So I'm hoping that they've got enough to help two in our county. Supervisor Sieber.
I'd like to make that in form of a motion to stay consistent with our last motion, and perhaps it could go over to Liza's department, who works very closely and continues to advocate for those daycares.
Good idea. Okay. Yes. Wayne,
No, I'll second that.
thank you. Discussion. Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, my only suggestion is allow them to stay on the list just in case none of this funding is available to help them and we decide possibly in the future to give them something.
I'm fine with that. We have a couple of others that we have on hold, but let's make it a formal motion so that we can keep track of it too. Any further discussion? Moving those childcare ones to Ms. Ossendorf's office for follow-up, okay? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. I have another thought on this topic. Well, if people want to continue thinking, I think this is productive. Okay. The one about the recycling facility. I think that's really something that should go to the facilities committee for consideration. Is there a motion to that effect? Supervisor Beatty?
Yeah, I'll make that motion. I think that's sound thinking that it should go to facilities and let them determine the merits of it. Maybe funding.
Is there a second? I will second that. This discussion.
It was a big ask. I think it's appropriate to pass it,
And it's
looking at our budget.
intended to be a county infrastructure asset. I think it should come through the committee structure of the county. Okay. Further debate? All those in favor of moving the recycling facility to the facilities committee, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Mr. Supervisor Leggett, have any?
Can we keep going? I think that this is pretty productive. Let's pull out what we don't think we need to look at. Or refer to different areas.
Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you. I have one for proposal, but also just a question. That last one, what was the dollar amount? I'm just trying to figure out how much more money we'll have at the end. For our other.
That was a pretty big one.
126 and the formula
126.
was 89.4.
I'm sorry.
They asked for 126 based on the formula that Supervisor Leggett came up with last time.
I think
Was doing on the spreadsheet.
Sure.
What was proposed was 89.4.
So 126 was there.
For which one?
Mammoth Recycling.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the Warren County Department of Public Works recycling facility for 1.45 million.
Ah.
Is that, do we need to have a revote on it? Is everyone clear? I'm sorry. I meant the one that's proposed for Department of Public Works within the county,
I see.
not Mammoth.
Right.
Oh, Amanda, is it proper to have a revote on that, just to be clear that that was the one?
I don't think it would hurt.
Okay. So just a revote on this recycling. The motion, let me just make sure Supervisor Bader, you were talking about the 1.4 million
That's correct. I was talking about the 1.45 million facility.
county,
Facility. That's correct.
and that was what I was referring to. Any further debate? I'm going to call that question again, just so we're clear on the record. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you. Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. So looking at this, early on in our discussions, while we recognize that sewer funds were something that we could in fact utilize, I know the committee, we do have a committee on the county board that addresses, I think it's our septic committee. I don't recall the formal name, but I know it is in effect till the end of the year. And I guess I would just ask that as a representative from Queensberry, that we look at the Montcalm Housing Development Fund. There's two requests. There's one for 464 and one is 3.5 million. I do believe that a lot of this should fall within the town of Queensberry, and then can also, perhaps there's some funding that they could apply for through, I don't know if it's our septic and sewer committee or the grant dollars that were awarded through the state. I know that's a little, that's competitive, and I know that there was talk about additional dollars coming out for that, and I'm not so sure. Hopefully, when they get our comments, Montcalm, they're going to be able to see some more information about that application process. But I also think we can connect them with some state resources. So, I don't know. I would refer this over to our septic and committee to take a look at when they meet before the end of the year and provide any assistance that they can and discussion on these two topics.
Is that a motion to refer to the septic
Yeah.
committee? This, okay. Supervisor Thomas?
Which one? Both of them or what? Or
Yeah, please be specific. Let's,
So Madam Chairwoman, in response to the supervisor from Stony Creek, I am referring to the Montcalm Housing Fund for 464,000 for connection to the town of Queensberry, and the Montcalm Housing Development Fund, which again is for plant refurbishment and connection to the town of Queensberry new sewer line for 3.5 million.
thank you for being specific and clear.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Is there a second to that motion? Supervisor Beatty? Discussion. Not seeing any. We'll take a vote. Try voice. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
opposed?
Thank you.
Staying.
1 no, 1 abstention. Amanda, can you help me? Does that pass?
I believe it does. Let me just double check. Yes, it still passes. You have 10 people. So with an abstention and a no, you still have 8 in favor.
Okay, that passes. Anything further? Supervisor Seaver.
I would ask that the resolution that was tabled, and perhaps we do this when we look at the not-for-profits. I know as a committee, we looked at small businesses. That was, I remember Beth, Ms. Gillis asked, committee member Gillis. I've got to get this right. The committee member from the Lake George, Lake Champlain, I gotta stop calling names. They had suggested that, we make small businesses a priority here today. So at the end of the discussion about that, I would ask that we please make a motion to discuss once again the North Warren Emergency Squad. I think it was unfortunate that that was tabled because it then was modified to include so many other EMSs that had not filed applications. Our application deadline has been closed for a while. I think there's a lot of organizations that would like to apply had we done rolling applications. But rolling applications is difficult when we have limited money and the pocket smaller each time. So I would just like to ask that this committee untable that specific resolution for North Warren Emergency Squad at the time we discuss the not-for-profits.
Understood. Any other requests to refer or
There was,
come up with an alternative solution for any of these? I think that
what about? Did we talk about the CSA unit 9,000 for $800,000?
we did not. My colleague from Chestertown.
Thank
Do you have a recommendation on that or a motion to make?
What's the committee's feeling on keeping this in? It was seemed to score low overall.
Mr. Lamont?
I said to Ethan, or my colleague from the planning department, that I wasn't gonna say much today, but on this one, I believe our county attorney said that premium pay was not an eligible use of funds. And when I read this, that is what they're looking for. So I don't see that it's a valid application to begin with. So I would recommend that we remove it, but that's for further discussion.
I'll second that.
I'm going to accept that as a motion in a second, if you guys are fine with that. Mr. Elman.
I am not involved with the review of the applications that have come before the committee. That position on premium pay was very specific for the county. I would like the opportunity to review the details of that request. Premium pay for some private entities is very valid. The issue was the county using those funds to pay employees for services already rendered as a violation of the New York State Constitution gift and loans clause. I cannot on the fly give an opinion as to whether that same reasoning would apply to another entity outside of the county government. So that would be my only legal advice I can give today on that topic.
I will defer to the county attorney's opinion on that and withdraw my motion to pending his review and comments when he has the time to look at it.
We won't go off of when I have the time, but when I get the application, I'll take a look through it and follow up and be prepared for the next meeting to answer that question.
I'm going to come to you next. Supervisor Leggett.
Right. I guess it's really a question among the board right here, allowed or not. It could be a very applicable application. Does the board want to support that and move that through for further consideration or take it off the table so that we can appropriate money appropriately?
Or in our discretion based on our criteria and how we're moving forward. Supervisor Seaver.
I don't know if your second to that motion is agreeing to withdraw it or not, so I'm assuming we're still discussing the motion before us.
That's a good point. Supervisor Thomas,
Yes.
are you agreeing to withdraw the second to the motion?
Well, I was just looking at the thing here and no, I'm not. I'll make that as motion that we withdraw.
Okay, so
Says right here, not a legal use of funds in New York.
well, that's a comment from a committee member.
Okay.
Knowing that our
I'll believe it.
legal advisor hasn't given us a specific opinion on the CSEA application, I think that my colleague from Chestertown made a good point that we can make a decision based on our discretion as to whether or not to move those funds forward, knowing that the county has awarded raises to CSEA union employees since this application was submitted. I don't know. Frank, do you want to leave your motion on the table or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you for yielding back to me. Then the discussion item that I have based on the motion that's in front of us. I don't know if someone seconded that or if you need to, but regardless, my point here is perhaps to ask for a tabling of this until our next meeting. I would ask that the planning department please give our county attorney the password and the link to the chart, to the applications that we can all see so that he can at any time pull them up, review them and look at them in detail. And to my supervisor from Stony Creek's point, there are comments in here that have questions about whether or not it is a legal use of funds. They are committee questions. But there are also other comments on here that it should be addressed by the county board, or that perhaps there needs to be a bigger conversation. My only concern here is that they do go on to also talk about reimbursement to employees that had to work from home who were not provided with county equipment. They use their own iPhones, their computers, their electricity, et cetera, at their personal cost, providing essential services. And that's something that in 2021, I know the board worked very hard to rectify and provide equipment to those that had to work from home and do our very best to make sure that our employees are not utilizing their personal expenses or equipment to do their job and that we're supporting their positions and their essential services. So I do think the application is more county attorney than just premium pay, but also looking for reimbursement of some of those costs, which may be different. So my only suggestion was to table it to the next month in order for our county attorney to weigh in.
So I have a motion to table on the floor. Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, I'll second that to table. I don't have a clear understanding whether we can or can't until the county attorney can give us that clear direction. I think we table it. I mean, to me, that's the common sense thing to do. We don't know if we can, we don't know if we can't. So why are we going forward with it? Let's table it until we have clear direction, legal direction.
Further debate on the motion to table. Yes.
Madam Chairman, really the question is, do we want to? It's not if we can or can't, it's do we want to?
Any further discussion on the motion to table? And whether we want to table. I'm going to call the question with voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed. All opposed.
Two, I'm counting two opposed. I'll take it by hands. Please raise your hand if you agree, voting yes to the motion to table. Okay, opposed, that carries. We will table it to our next committee meeting. Okay. Any further items? I did want to mention, I received a message from Sarah. She said that the comments on the sheets for each of the applications are all the comments. They are all the comments. So anything about alternative funding requests or options would be in those comments. Supervisor Seaver.
Chairwoman, just in response to that, it would be helpful to just have one report, but just the comments about alternative funding so we can provide it to the public, to the entities, and so that we as a committee can sort out what's the alternative funding versus the optional comments.
Okay,
that was all.
Sarah is a whiz, so I'm sure she's going to be able to just magically make this happen. Oh, Sarah, sorry. I know she's watching. Yes, Supervisor Seaver. It's keep going.
In light of the discussion that we just had about premium pay, there's a Ms. Almatter, I don't know how to say her last name, and I apologize for that. Who requested employee premium pay, who's a county employee in the amount of $5,000. Perhaps that should also be considered. There's several for premium pay, and if we're going to table one, it looks like CWI also put in for stipends for essential workers and premium pay. So just in light of the research that will need to take place for premium pay, I would make the motion to table, keep on the list, but table those other premium pay requests as well for our county attorney to review and make the determination between private and public and what specifically on those applications they ask for. And to be clear, that's the CWI education stipends for essential workers at 45, CWI premium pay for essential workers at 420, and employee premium pay funding request was 5,000. And I think I see put in this premium pay Warrensburg Emergency Medical Services for 150,000. So I think that covers all of the requests for premium pay for a complete attorney review.
Thank you for being specific. I just want to clarify, is the Warrensburg? No, it was North Warren. Never mind. Okay. So is that a motion then for the ones that you just listed? Is everyone clear? Is there a second?
I will, but I have a comment if I may.
You may. Go ahead.
I guess I question the need to actually table it since we're not going to discuss it this time. Maybe it's just a recommendation of the county attorney to be prepared to discuss those when the committee does, when they come up on our agenda, but for
I
the sake of
understand.
moving it forward.
Yep.
I will second.
And for the sake of clarity and understanding that this will be the committee's consensus, I'd like to take a vote, but we can have further discussion. Anything? Okay. I'll try a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. So, Mr. Elman? Do you understand or do you need further clarification from us?
I will be getting it from the clerk who took copious notes on that.
Thank you. Wonderful. Ms. Allen is great. All right. More. What else? Okay. In preparation for today's meeting, I did go through all the applications. We have the spreadsheet that we know about. I started it just to try to take a look at it, and I know some other committee members have as well, so I welcome your comments at this time on a formula for looking at these. What I did was based on our committee discussion where we said, let's take the score, the average score, and apply that to the request. So say if they requested $100,000 and their score was 75, then I made a new column saying that their proposed award based on the score would be 75,000. So 75% of their request. When I did that, it was still quite a bit of money, more in requests than we had in dollars to expend. So I tried to come up with a formula to.
My apologies.
No problem. Making sure mine's silenced too. Coming up with a formula then to objectively look at the remaining applications and say, how much money do we have left? How can we fund these? And I did not, as the chairperson, take it upon myself to remove any of these applications. Now that we've done that with some of these today, I think it'll be a little bit different looking at it as an overall picture. But what I did was I took the bottom half of the scored applications and I simply reduced each of their potential awards by 50%. If they were in the 50% bottom of all the scores, I reduced their already reduced request by 50%. And that got us to a number that was manageable and within what we had to award, and left us with about $500,000 to work with. I think that that's going to need to be changed a little bit now that we have removed some of these officially. But if we want to start on that formula, I gave you guys the a shorter sheet with just the remaining not-for-profits that were at kind of, not all of them, it's like another batch that I thought maybe we could get through today. And then we also obviously have all of the small businesses as well. So I want to take comments on the formula, or if anyone else has a different way to approach this in an objective way before we start crunching down through each of the applications. Beth?
I didn't even raise my hand.
Yes, you did.
I did. So after our last meeting, after the conversation we had about using everybody's score as a percentage of what they would get. It was mentioned that was still well over $1.1 million in the small business category alone. And so we had a conversation or discussion several meetings ago to cap any of the small business awards at $50,000. And so that we might want to circle back around to that. One thing I did, even doing that, we were still really pretty high over the 750 that we had kind of used as a term, so, or as a starting point for funding. So what I did after that was took the $50,000 cap and then used the percentage of their scoring to give them. So if they had asked for 200, we capped them at 50, but they only got a 70 or a 50. It went down to half, and I think that got us. I might not have that spreadsheet open, but I think it got us down to like 785 around there. But that's giving everybody funding, and I think we really need to make a decision as to whether we're going to try to give everybody a little bit, or we're just going to have to realize that we can't get to everybody, and there will be some that fell at the bottom that won't receive any funding.
That's a good point. I talked with Ethan too about that, or maybe that was Supervisor Beatty, about, this is a competitive process. I know that Ethan did mention that to me, just as many of these grant processes are through the state. And sometimes if you're at the bottom, you fall off the bottom. So we could come up with a formula that says if you're the 20% of the bottom, or 10% or 5%, I'm so sorry, you're not going to be funded anything, and it leaves a little bit more for the rest. Or do we take the approach that we want to try to fund everyone, even if that means they only get a wee tiny bit because they're at the very bottom? Supervisor Wild, you had your hand up. You did have your hand up.
Thank you. I did speak with a woman from Habitat Humanity after the meeting, the last meeting we had. And she mentioned that she was involved with the federal government's process of identifying how to hand out funding and grants. Pardon me. And she did say kind of what we're talking about now. The top scorers got a haircut of a certain percentage. The medium scorers got another haircut. The lower had either a huge haircut or they didn't get anything at all. So I think we're on the right track with that. But as you know, I've been thinking about the future. Would it be possible to consider saving a certain percentage of these funds for something that we didn't anticipate? Not to say that it's going to go to the county, but for something we didn't anticipate, because that's what the federal government does. Because when they make their decisions, there are always other requests that come along that have significant value. And if we could reserve a little bit for something that might come about, because we do have time, I think it would be prudent, but it's just my suggestion. Thank you.
Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I think in your opening statements today, you did mention that using the formula that you proposed, it does a lot, about 500,000, to be able to look at some of those other projects that we had put on hold to come back and look at. Again, I want to reiterate that the last two meetings, we've talked about prioritizing not-for-profits here today. And I would hope that we're going to pick up where we left off. We started that review last time, but we lost quorum when two supervisors left, and we were not able to continue that application and award process. So
Supervisor Sieber, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you said not-for-profits. Do you mean small businesses?
Thank you for correcting me. I do.
So I was like,
small businesses.
okay.
I'm sorry. We did say small businesses. And I like the committee member from the Lake George Lake Commission. What is the right acronym that I can just use?
LCLGRPB.
LCR, wait,
LGRPB.
LCR. Wow, we're just going with
So LCLG.
LCLG. Thank you very much. I hate using acronyms, but I think in this case it's worth it. The committee member from LCLG had brought up, and I'm of the mindset that if we are able, removing those other two that we referred over, and taking a look at being able to provide some partial funding to all those applicants before us, if we had stuck with our $1 million allotment without diverting funds over to the general fund, we would have been able to fund all of them at the prorated amount based on the average scores. I would also ask at the appropriate time that we hear from Ethan, or we hear from our colleague from the planning department who has more information about why that preferred, is this a priority and what that was meant to do as we all scored. Again, this is only as good as the scores that are in front of us. And that's why every single member was asked to work hard on this and participate. And I think the scoring averages are incredibly important. And if we could please address the small businesses and perhaps hear from our colleague from the LCLG on how that further reduction would take place and meet the needs for all of the entities.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Yes,
Was there?
I'm going to give Ethan a moment to think and he can weigh in.
Yeah,
We're not.
the topic of the priority rating, I don't have a clear answer for you on that one. I know that there's been some classification and organization made in the past two meetings regarding the priority score. I don't know what the consensus is on that, though.
Why was the priority score developed? I'm sorry, Madam Chairwoman.
Go ahead.
Can you just give us the history on why the priority score was developed? I know some members, like myself, said, yes, if I had unlimited funding, I would say that this is a priority for everybody that applied, and how can it be utilized in their organization because it was important and a priority to them. There were other members that said, I don't think any of them are a priority, or very few. So
Yeah, that's correct. There's definitely a lot of confusion on that, and that's why it's not a very useful tool for making final determinations, in my opinion. I don't think there was a clear consensus at the onset of the evaluation process for what the priority ranking meant. So I don't think it was uniformly applied by many members. I think it's probably more accurate to use the actual score itself. But I'll defer to the other committee members if they have a stronger opinion or a deeper understanding of what the priority indicator meant. But, as someone that went through and scored the applications myself, I don't think that, my priority scores are going to line up with somebody else's. I don't think we had that shared understanding at the onset.
I would agree with that from my discussions with people. I mean, we all kind of interpreted it a little bit differently when we were going to check that box, yes, as a priority or not. I see several hands, so I'm going to go, Mr. Agnew.
I agree completely. It felt somewhat subjective. Because it was either yes or no. Sarah had a fairly lengthy explanation of how she came up with the scoring. God love her, that's complicated. She said a priority score was calculated for each project by dividing the number of times a project was given a yes by the total number of prioritizations. So for example, if 5 reviewers gave it a yes priority and 4 reviewers gave it a no, the priority score was 56%, 5 divided by 9. And that's just sort of an ARPA. I don't think she was trying to be arbitrary, but I guess I'm in a long-winded way agreeing with Ethan that I don't know how that works. For me, it's in a couple of comments I left. There were projects that were clearly put together by people who really knew grantsmanship. And there were projects by folks who were just saying, I need help. And if their projects were not complete, their applications really weren't complete. But some of those I marked yes as a priority because I could see they really needed the help. So
Yeah, it wasn't the formula that Sarah put together. It was more of us and how we were interpreting what we felt for the priority of that project. I did the same thing, Ray, is what someone was like, yes, they really need help. That's a priority. In the grand scheme of things, something else may have been more of a priority. Yeah.
And to Supervisor Wild's point about how the federal government does it, he's absolutely right, but they're also really strict about every piece of an application being complete, or they'll put it aside and not consider it.
And we did not do that.
We didn't do that.
We didn't,
No.
yeah. Supervisor Beatty and then Mr. Supervisor Leggett.
Yeah, I concur with the fellow committee members. The scoring aspect holds in my mind the key. The priority column, although helpful, was very subjective, and there was too many variables to give it its due diligence, due day. So the scoring column to me overwhelmingly is the key of this committee in determining which projects they felt had more merit, which ones didn't. And just a reminder, we have to spend the ARPA money by federal law by a certain date. Okay. And the priority, and many on this committee expressed, I know the co-chairman, who's not here today, expressed serious concern that we get the money out. In fact, he was complaining we weren't spending the money fast enough. He said it at 2 different meetings, spend the money. So, although holding back something sounds like a decent idea, I don't think in practicality it is. And the key, what the federal government wanted was to help businesses, organizations, nonprofits now. Not to hold something back and say, well, maybe 30 years from now, because we do have a day in which we have to spend it. That's how stringent they were. You have to spend it by this day. Okay, so let's put that into consideration. But again, the scoring should overwhelmingly be the driving factor in this process, in my opinion. Thank you.
Yes, Supervisor Thomas.
While that may be true, I don't think that we should ignore the priority either. Because that gives you a percentage of the people that reviewed the things, the applications, as to who's, if the committee's more in favor of funding this or not in favor. Because some of these I scored, they got a high score, but I still said no to the funding. Several. So, I don't think it should be ignored. Maybe the score should rank higher, but I think to ignore it is a mistake. Because we do need to have priorities. Don't we? I mean, we only got so much money, so.
Well, I think these are good comments. I think that we're going to have to go through one by one. And try to apply the formula the best we can. I mean, my colleague from the Regional Planning Board's formula is to reduce every one of them to 50% right off the top, right? For small businesses.
No, anyone who asked for over $50,000, their ask got put to 50. And then the percentage of the score they got was applied to
For
that
that.
50.
Mhm.
If it was for a singular business, there are a couple of applications in here that are for multiple, like the hours, the Glens Falls Regional Venture Ecosystem. It's not to one singular business, it's to assist multiple businesses. And then to,
So you would look at that different.
so I didn't reduce those. And then to make it harder, I think that there were a couple in this category that maybe don't belong in this category. And that's a question, I think, for Attorney Elman. I didn't realize the significance of the categorization when it came down to contracting. Like I didn't realize
Yeah.
that till our conversation at the last meeting. So then there's a couple that I think should go into a different category. Not get funded, just go into a different category.
I would like to start going through them. I think that's the only way that we're going to have to be able to, there are some where we might not apply the formula exactly. Supervisor Sieber.
Chairwoman, I think it's important that we be consistent, but at the same point in time, we just removed significant dollars. So making additional funds available to the overall picture. I would just like to know what that new total is, and perhaps we could start with the formula that you've prepared for us to look to today and see where that lands us. And then if that's still not realistic, we could certainly go to an alternative formula as suggested by our colleague.
I mean, I think the idea of trimming more as we go down the line can help us with that too, but the formula that I prepared leaves us at just under $1 million for small businesses. For small businesses only. Yes.
What is the total that we have now that we've referred out? 1.45 million, 35,000, 75,000, 464, and 3.5 million.
I understand what you're saying. However, we still only have a universe of 3.6 million to work with. We didn't We didn't make new money. We didn't make new money.
Okay.
And so I think we still need to keep our categories, if we are looking at 3 categories and trying to keep each one of them around 1 million or under, that's gonna get us there somewhat fairly and give most people something realistic for them to work with,
Madam Chair.
rather than cutting them so much that like, what's even the point of giving them the money? Yes, I'm thinking that we should, I mean, I know I prepared the shorter sheet with the not-for-profits, but it sounds like we need to dig into the businesses, which we have the other sheet ready to go. Gina put on the back of it a couple of pages with the allocations that we've already awarded, in case anyone wants to look back at that. Mr. Leggett, yes, Supervisor Leggett. Before we do that,
Right, before we get into that, I think we should really settle our philosophy here. This has been brought up. Do we fund everybody that's applied? Or do we select some and do not select others? So as we go through these, is it okay to say, no, don't fund this particular one? Is that okay? Or is it all, nope, everybody gets something?
yes, Wayne.
I will comment probably will be perceived in a negative manner, but I don't believe that these are economic development funds. I think we have agencies for that. And when I look at the NACO summary on page 3 from March 8th of 2021, the funds, use of funds, respond to public health emergency. I'm going to paraphrase. I'm not going to read all their paragraphs. I'm going to read what they have bolded. Premium pay for eligible workers of the county, government services to the extent there was a reduction in revenue, and make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband. I do not see where we would do new business ventures as part of this as an allowable use. And I think some of these applications are for new business ventures. And I think you have the EDC, you have the Regional Planning Board loan funds, you have SBA funds. So I question whether we should consider those.
Supervisor Seaver.
Just briefly in response to that, our committee made a commitment early on to look at the survey results from our community and to talk about how we could utilize these funds. Assistance to small businesses is on page 10 of the overall final rule from the US Treasury. It was something that was bullet pointed as number 3. Before that was assistance to households, which my supervisor to the right of me from Queensbury talked about that potential idea. But the majority did not agree with it, so we move forward. I think that it's really important that we listen to our community here at home, and they told us mental health and assistance to small businesses was one of the top priorities. We also recognize that when we went out and asked for applications from our community. I think we have the information in front of us to make the determinations, and we should continue with the scoring application formula and start making these awards and getting them out to people that can help. To Supervisor from Chester, our acting in this role, our acting county administrator, I do believe that we should do everything we can to provide some funding as long as they meet the requirements on this application process to small businesses. And my colleague from LG is to I would like us to move the ones out of the categories that perhaps if they don't fall under small business, let's just deal with ones that are small business if you feel there's some that need to be moved out. That was all.
So the ones that are simply small businesses, do we or do we not want to cap them at 50,000? Individual small businesses.
Could we have a vote on that?
I'm asking the committee.
That's what
I'm trying to come up with a process. Supervisor Wild?
My hand wasn't up, sorry, Madam Chair.
I don't need to take a vote on it. If that's a consensus, we'll try to stick to that. I mean, I don't want to make firm hard rules. There could be some compelling reason. But I think it's a good suggestion. And I think we did talk about that a long time ago. And it also has to do with the ARPA funding rules if you fund over 50,000, there are more reporting requirements. So
Correct.
we talked about that a long time ago.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
We're trying to eat an elephant here, so let's break it down into smaller bites, or let's peel the onion on this. There's a lot of entities in front of us with a lot of numbers attached. Let's go through and see which ones are worthy of further attention. And then when we take a look at who remains in there, let's come back and
Okay.
score, and let's just take it one layer at a time.
Let's be open to, like we did last time, to say, let's hold on this one. To my colleague from Queensberry's point, we can hold it aside and say there's still money here to be had. And not tell anyone they're totally out in the cold for right this moment. All right. So if everyone's with me, we're gonna start on number one. And the way I ranked it with the spreadsheet, hopefully I didn't mess this up, is that the category rank is number one. So it's in the first row. Yeah, Beth.
I just want to comment that the sheet we're looking at now has the ones that I thought shouldn't be in this category are not in it.
Oh, good.
So it was the Brant Lake Inc. and the Scholarship Fund, I thought should be a nonprofit.
We did, yeah.
So
That kind of happened behind the scenes. Sorry about that. I didn't make that clear.
So to
Okay,
be
good.
clear, we're on the sheet that say address, neg, echo, impact, assist, small businesses.
Yes,
And white.
we just got it this morning. Okay, sorry. Ready? Lotus. Requested 100,000. Using the formula I applied, the 79 score would put them to 79, but I think we're saying, let's try to cap most of these small businesses at 50,000. Do I have a motion on this one? Supervisor Seaver.
I would make that motion at 50,000.
I'll second it to get it on the floor. Is there debate? Ethan?
Would could we maybe, as opposed to making motions to approve each individual one, maybe just go down the list and then approve the entire
Okay.
package at once?
Okay. Who made that motion? Just hear me out. Maybe go through this like a worksheet. And then at the end, I still think we're gonna need individual motions in the end, because
At the end, yeah.
the clerk has asked me for that, and people like to vote no on individual ones, and I'm not going to deny that opportunity for people. The vote matters. But if we could just work through it at like a worksheet for now. Supervisor Seaver, my colleague who made the motion, would you be willing to withdraw your motion at this time?
Sure.
Thank you very much. I'll withdraw the second. All right, so let's just go down. The next one is kind of in the same vein. I'm gonna mark it for 50,000. The Regional Planning Board, we had a discussion about a funding amount of 150,000 would allow them to go forward with the programming. And they would assist multiple businesses. So this isn't a single business venture. It's going to multiple business support.
Right.
Wayne?
This would be a subrecipient agreement.
Oh, because the way it's being structured, my understanding is it's to retain experts who would then be able to advise small businesses, but I don't want to speak out of my lane.
I do think that's correct. They are not providing funding.
All right.
Correct.
They are hiring consultants to help small businesses with certain services. Okay. The Mammoth Recycling business. We would put them at 50,000 as well. Renaissance only asked for 40,000. My formula put them at 28,000. I would suggest that we leave them at the 28,000.
I mean,
Go ahead, Wayne.
yeah, I think when I reviewed this one, their actual COVID loss was 20, so I would be comfortable with the 28. I think they documented 20. I really went through the not-for-profit stuff, the rest of it today, not all the business ones, so
Let's see.
I hear you. Let me take further discussion on this one. Supervisor Seaver.
I think at this juncture, if we applied your formula, and then depending on the dollar amount that's available at the end, perhaps coming back to those under 50,000 and applying a similar thought process to that. But I do want to remind the committee that these awards were not to be contingent on whether they received PPP or other federal money. It was not for just straight COVID loss. It was to rebound and be resilient from the pandemic. So we did ask entities, not-for-profits, businesses, community members to think about programs that they could implement moving forward to help individuals in our community be able to rebound from a pandemic. And that in large part is why they were ARPA dollars that were given to all of our counties. I firmly believe, like my colleague from Queensbury has shared with me, and I want to give you credit for this, Supervisor, that if the federal government was intended to give all of the ARPA money to just offset the general funds, they would have done it that way. They gave us all an opportunity to look at this differently and to help our communities. And so it's not just for loss, but also for innovative programs to rebound.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
on Mammoth, according to their application, that they rejuvenated property recycling hub will open in August 2022. Is this a new business then? And should it be considered under this process? Or set aside?
Stragna.
Is this the group that presented to us? I really.
I don't believe Mammoth did present to us. And I do believe that this is a new business or someone that's getting off the ground relatively recently.
Madam Chairwoman, can I provide just some legal guidance? Because it seems to be there might be a little confusion in this category of small business.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Under the Treasury rules and the commentary for the Treasury rules, it's very clear that the expenditure of ARPA funds for small businesses are for small businesses that were in existence and suffered negative consequences from the COVID-19 pandemic. I am unclear and unaware of any legal basis to provide a potential future small business with ARPA funds that was not in existence during the pandemic and therefore did not suffer the negative consequences directly of the pandemic. Specifically, the rule that we're working under the Treasury rules provides for assistance to small business, which includes programs, services, or capital expenditures that respond to the negative economic impacts of the COVID-19 public health emergency, including grants to mitigate financial hardship, such as declines in revenues or impacts of periods of business closure, or to provide technical assistance. The commentary provides more specific examples of those three main groups, I'll call them. And the examples that you find in the commentary, again is the Treasury Department's attempt to amplify and expand those rules. And they do so to the tune of hundreds of pages of comments after receiving public comments on the rules. So those examples are supporting payroll benefits, the cost to retain employees, mortgage payments, rents, utilities, and operating costs. So we're talking about ARPA funds that are going to be used for an entity, a small business that was in existence and suffered negative consequences during COVID-19. So if there's applications in here that are making a proposal for venture capital for some future business operation, I do not see how that falls under the requirements of the Treasury rules and the intent behind the ARPA funds for assistance to small business. Now, let me just give one quick caveat. If there's an existing business that's creating a program, service, or a capital expenditure That business was in existence during COVID-19. And they're looking to do something to address the negative economic consequences of COVID-19. That would need some more work, but that's a very limited subset. If there's applications and people who are looking funding to start a new venture tomorrow, I am unaware of any legal basis to support that in the ARPA Treasury rule, well, in the statute, the rule, or the commentary that was issued by Treasury.
Go ahead, questions?
May I ask,
Yeah.
County Attorney? Thank you for that clarification, and I think it highlights the supervisor from Chester, the acting county administrator's point regarding Mammoth, and I'm glad he went back to that. But your last caveat on expanding a program is exactly what I was referring to, a program that's in existence that is now incorporating another aspect to help rebound and be resilient to the pandemic. I would ask you, County Attorney Elman, to please then look at the awards that we're giving for startup costs for daycares and for other entities. Perhaps it's different under a not-for-profit, but there are some that, like a daycare can be a small business. And if we're referring those over for other assistance.
The Southern Adirondack Award fell squarely under a different provision of the Treasury rules, specifically the aid to households under sub A,
Okay.
which
I
the
was
supervisor referenced earlier today.
referring to the other two that were tabled today. If you look at those,
We'll have him look at those.
thanks. But yes, thank
And
you for the
on
clarification.
Mammoth, given that advice, I would like to say that we put that one on hold. I mean, I don't think we should put it at 0 right now, but it doesn't sound like it does fit squarely. So I think we need to put that one on hold. We're talking about Mammoth Recycling. All right, so I'm going to do something with this one, so I don't forget. And what about Renaissance? Sorry, yep.
Why wouldn't we just remove it? I mean, I've got the application and the fund, everything in front of it. It's everything that our county attorney just
He
said
just
we're
said
not
we
allowed to
can't.
do.
I'm,
I mean, there's nothing else in
It's-
here that talks about an existing business.
that was my recollection too, that it's a brand new business. Then, you know,
It says it's a resubmit. I don't know what the first one meant.
does anyone have any other objections to removing it? Saying no, 0. Okay, I'm gonna put it at 0 on our worksheet. Okay, Renaissance Dining Group. This is Cafe Adirondack. I don't recall this one being new, right?
No, it's been.
This is
been in.
none of, this is, okay. So my suggestion is to leave that at the 28.4 for now.
Yep.
We'll just leave it there for now, and we could circle back if we have additional funds. Same with the Alchemy Bagel Cafe, leave it at 6,210. Glens Falls Regional Venture Ecosystem, this is something to support other small businesses. I was thinking we'd leave it at the 69,000, even though that's a little over 50. It is supporting other businesses in the community. Kind Cycling, we heard from them and their loss of revenue. I'll stop. Yep. Supervisor Sieber.
Just to go back to the, thank you, Madam Chairwoman, just to go back to the ecosystem, in reading their application, they do say on here that they are a not-for-profit.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah.
So, or should it be moved over in the not-for-profit?
Let me just ask the county attorney on that. And I mean, the regional planning board isn't technically a business either, but it's business support. I just want to make that point.
Okay.
I know there is a legal
That's fine.
question on this issue. Go ahead, Mr. Elman.
Did you want to address what we previously discussed yesterday, or do you want me to? Okay. Some of these entities that submitted applications after the last meeting, when I was looking at 1 or 2 to determine whether they were not-for-profits or actually for-profits, the ones that did not seem to include a reference to a Inc. or a LLC or an LP, some legal form of a business organization, I then attempted to run quickly through the Department of State website. And a number of these entities did not have any registration on file with the state of New York, which would make them a recognized business organization in the state of New York. So then the next question was whether these were DBA certificates, doing business as certificates filed in Warren County. And I believe one of the entities, I did not do this part, but there were some emails that came back that said Kind Cycling did have a doing business as certificate filed in Warren County. And what that means is it's an individual who reports the business activity through their personal income tax return on the Schedule C that's attached to a 1040. So while there's a number of names here, other than Kind Cycling, I was unable to, or I don't believe there was any success in finding a DBA for, I believe, Roosters Amusements, J Labs, Crafted. Going to the next page, Brunetto's Restaurant, the Small Tales, North Country Guitar, My Almond Tree Shop, which means
Larry,
if there's an award, it's going to an individual, not to the entity that's named here. Because the entity that's named here is not incorporated in the state of New York and cannot receive an ARPA award, is not a DBA, and therefore would be whoever is the individual who submitted the application.
okay. I do, I think the question on the floor was whether or not we should move Glens Falls Regional Venture Ecosystem out of this category. I don't think we need to.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Again, project start date September 1st, 2022. This is a new venture starting out altogether. It's to support other ventures, but it's a new venture that's coming out. It may have redundancy on programs that are already available. Looking at the paucity of our funds, I would say striking this totally from consideration by the ARPA committee.
That's second.
I just want to ask, because I can't remember exactly, did this one though say it was helping businesses out of COVID?
They will once they get started.
Is that a question, or does the committee want to strike this one as a new going concern type of thing? Okay.
Right.
I am looking at the committee. Is that the consensus of the committee? Okay. I'm on Kind Cycling. Supervisor Wild.
Sorry, nothing to say. My hand is not up. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
18,961. Okay, Rooster. You see there my formula. I think we need to put that at 50,000. J Labs, was this, yes, the child care center, so we're gonna just put that one on hold for now because we did refer it to Liza.
Right.
Okay. Crafted. 13,000. Okay. Puckers Gourmet. I just gotta make sure I'm looking on the right column here.
Yeah, I don't think come over. Forward reward, 1,500.
Sorry, Craig, I didn't hear you. What'd you say? I'm on Puckers,
Yeah.
$1,575 according to the formula. It seems like such a small amount. Is the committee want to go with that? Do you want to strike them? Do you want to give them their 5,000? What do you want to do?
I'd say we give them the 5,000.
I do too. I'm not hearing anyone jumping up super opposed to that, so we'll do that. All right, Stevenson Lumber Company, 47,070. All brands. 14,750.
If I may, I don't know if they are still open.
Let's leave it in the worksheet and we will check on that one.
What one? What one?
That was all brands. Supervisor Leggett's comment was he's not sure if they're still open. in business. The next one, I would drop that 1 to 50,000, although I'm pretty sure that application involved a new expansion. So we would put that at 0.
But they're an existing business.
Yay, what do we want to do?
Let's take a look at
Keep it at 50.
R27.
Supervisor Seaver.
They're an existing business who's clearly been in our community for a very long time. I'm sure that they did have an impact due to COVID, and it's a restaurant. We know how they suffered. And it's also a tourism athletic, it's a golf course as well. So they did receive other funding, but at the end of the day, they're existing. They're talking about their impact from COVID. I say you use your formula and leave it at the 50.
This is.
Yes.
It does say
Right.
the project will add 1,600 square feet to the existing clubhouse
It's
to
a-
allow for the installation of golf simulators. The project will help the business be operational during the winter months and will allow us to maintain staff through the winter months. I don't know if this really qualifies as a COVID recovery.
Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, I'm going to abstain from discussion on this. I was a former owner of that establishment, so I'm just going to abstain and let the committee decide where they want to go on this. I don't own anything now there, but because I have those ties and so forth.
Okay. Thank you for the disclosure. I read it as an expansion of a new expansion project, not a COVID project.
Oh, it's good.
Supervisor Seaver.
What if we refer it over to occupancy tax as it's a golfing industry, it's a tourism, and maybe it's something they can consider if it's something that's bringing in people to come use their facilities. They
Got a
can also
motion?
apply to the town of Queensberry for our tax money or pardon me, is there?
Is there a motion? No.
Yeah, I would move that over.
Second.
Discussion to move this one to occupancy tax.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I believe it's probably more appropriate because it's an expansion and investment to go to someone like the LDC or the banking community. This isn't a COVID recovery. They had an outside venue, right, where people could actually do something outside during COVID. So I don't see it as being the best use of our ARPA funds.
The motion is to move it to the occupancy tax committee. We can always ask planning staff to reach out to them and say, why don't you try economic growth or other business loan funding opportunities?
May I
Supervisor
amend?
Seaver, yes.
I'd like to amend my motion to still move it over to occupancy tax, but in light of my supervisor my colleague from Queensberry's comments, I would also ask that the comments on alternative funding that were done by everyone who scored when we put that in be provided to Sunnyside. And because supervisor from Queensberry to my left was unable to score, it's clear, obviously, he's read this, but
Refer to our.
I'm sorry, Chairwoman, my suggestion here is to take his comments that he made on the floor here today and include them in that spreadsheet. So that it's not just limited to our comments from scoring, but also includes supervisor from Queensberry, his comments on the floor here today.
We will make sure we get those comments and we can provide them to the applicant. Is there any further discussion on moving it to OCTAX? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Opposed.
and one abstention.
Abstain.
That carries. Thank you. Yes, Wayne.
One thing I would, and this one would have been a prime example. Some of these projects are asking for this one, or say they ask for 200,000. And that was to fund something in its entirety, and we award 50, they still can't do their project. So I think it's somewhere we need to look at, does an award, a partial award, really accomplish anything? And you know, and what happens if they don't get their other funding? I think going forward, now that's at some point, we talk about having a reversing clause or whatever it's called, recapture clause, that if they don't expense by a certain time, it comes back. And so that we don't have to just lose it to the federal government. So.
No, absolutely. I think those are good comments. I think we did take that into consideration. Look at what we did with the regional planning board. They said they couldn't make a go of it if we reduce them any further. So we kept them at 150. I have Ray. Then you.
I was good. I'm gonna agree with Wayne. I think.
Perfect. Supervisor Seaver.
I agree with Wayne. I think a lot of us, or my colleague from the planning department, I think a lot of us did reach out to entities to ask them if anything would help if they weren't funded in its entirety and part of this review. But between now and the board meeting, it might be helpful for those that are reduced before it goes before the full board to either have our planning department or our county attorney's office. But we did fund a position for the planning department just for this purpose, to reach out to those that we've reduced in any capacity and ask them, are you still able to utilize this for your intent of which you applied for funds? And if the answer is no, I need the whole thing, then unfortunately, yes, we would have to remove that and it would go back to our to the remaining ARPA funds as we're looking at other categories. But that might be some due diligence that won't take very long to contact them and just make that quick email and phone call.
Mr. Lamothe, I did see your hand.
Yes, I think that's something that we can do. I would ask Gina to handle that, whatever official contact they had listed in their application, we will contact them at that through those means and provide assuming that this list gets passed forward today, we would, identify what the committee was prepared to award, and if that would still result in their project going forward, or would it have necessitate a restructure or just a removal of their application. So
Thank you. That would be greatly appreciated. I have Ray and then over here.
got that, Gina?
Mr. Agnew?
I think it's important for the planning department to let them know about the timeline
Mhm.
as well, because they may say, every little bit helps, but okay, well, every little bit helps, but you have to spend it by X.
Yeah.
And have your project.
Mr. Wild?
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Wild?
Yeah, thank you. A question for our attorney is whenever we do contracts to award this money, is that requirement in there, in the contract?
Spending the money by X date, is that your question?
Spending the money by the X date as well as spending the money specifically on the project that was asked and then the funding was requested for.
I certainly hope so. Let's ask.
Absolutely.
Great.
So we're pretty much covered, but everybody knows that.
Awesome. All right, let's keep going. All right, JLS Transport. 50,000. I think in this case, even a little bit's gonna help. Not that that's not a little, I think 50,000 is. Okay, all in glass studio, 11,400. ADK excursions.
Yeah.
This one, you'll note. Yep,
One,
Right?
the question on the all in glass, what
yeah.
wasn't really totally clear. Is that for work that had been done? And they didn't get paid for?
Oh, boy, I don't remember. Hold on.
I don't have it in front of me.
Does anyone have that one?
Yeah.
To provide funds to assist with loss of income, to pay back lease rent funds, to hire additional employee, to provide better pay to retain.
What's wrong with that?
No, it's the St. Isaac Jogues Church stained glass restoration. So.
I have in my notes that this one includes a request for $25,000 for personnel that was needed funding for out of COVID.
Got it.
They had other, yeah.
Thanks.
So if we're only giving 11,004, I think we're totally covered under COVID purposes.
Okay.
ADK excursions, did you guys follow what I was doing? There was the formula came up with 49,000. They've already received 30. we would allocate 19,
In addition,
correct?
or we could just say the 30 was good enough.
We could say that. I don't think that would be fair. Not that it wouldn't be fair. It was just not the way we're doing the formula with everyone else. We said we would leave them in and see what else we could do. All right. And we'll leave it unless anyone wants to fight it. The next one is Brunetto's, 6,875.
Yeah.
Small Tails, we moved. So I'm not gonna put a number to that one. North Country Guitar, yes.
I have a question about that for Attorney Allman. Of the ones that you mentioned that don't seem to be registered businesses, this is one that I patronize fairly regularly. And, you know, my credit card receipts all say North Country Guitar. In the old days when I wrote checks, the check was made to North Country Guitar. So wouldn't that indicate that they must be registered somehow in order to?
All I can say is that they don't appear in the Department of State website, and I was told that there was no DBA certificate found in Warren County.
My,
I've spent money in that store as well over the years. It's kind of a hallmark of our community, so.
I think some of these are, we have to nail down who the legal entity is. And if it runs through the person, it runs through the person. That's okay. We do need to do that though for the contracting purposes. Supervisor Sieber.
I'll just say, I agree with my colleague from the Glens Hospital here that there are many, many businesses that may not have a registered DBA or be listed in the state system, but we do know that they're businesses that contribute to our community that have suffered during COVID, and have taken the time to apply because it goes to an individual who's running a business. Many, many entities do that. Many people do that. And I think we need to be supportive. And particularly in this one, it's reading their applications very clear to see how that works.
Supervisor Wild,
Madam Chair, thank you. Another question for our attorney, if you don't mind.
go ahead.
Larry, have you checked to see whether they have state tax IDs for their businesses?
I have done very little, and I only started down that road because there was a question concerning some of the entities that were on this list that were not for profits, one or two, Queensberry Scholarship being one of them. And then as I was doing that, it struck me that a number of the entities on the list weren't reporting a business organization, like an LLC or an Inc. in their name. So I just did quick checks and then passed on the information that they weren't registered with the state.
Yeah, we might just check state tax ID numbers and stuff, because as a small business, I have to have one of those also. So I make sure I pay all my state sales taxes.
Yeah, definitely.
So-
I think Jean has been helping, so we'll get it nailed down. Supervisor Sieber.
Just to that point, I think we also need to look at the EIN numbers. Many times it's just their social security number, but not everybody's going to be selling a product. So, you know, there might be businesses that are not selling something that you're requiring a sales tax for. So let's not paint everybody with one big broad brush. They're here, they've applied. And I think we're identifying the ones where there's a red flag.
Okay, I do too. All right, North Country, so 12,250. Did I say that right? All right. We're getting to the bottom. My almond tree. 10,500. And Stickies graphics, 13,000. I'm just gonna take a pause there. That's the end of our worksheet. For small businesses. I have no idea what the total number is. Why don't we do this? It's been 2 hours. I don't remember exactly the Roberts Rules procedure for asking for a break, but let's take a 5-minute break. We'll put it into a spreadsheet and get a coffee and we'll come back. Is anyone opposed to that?
Make a motion for a temporary recess.
A temporary recess motion has been made.
I'll second that.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Want to not take a break? Okay, thank you. Just 5 minutes. Don't go away, please. I don't want to lose.
So you got pictures?